and welcome to Amazons with me, Chris Stafford.
And I am Marci Kornegay joining you in, and it's going to be a blast. Looking forward to the conversation. I am the host of the Strip Naked podcast, and I'll tell you what, Chris, I had to take a quick little vacation to run off and get in the woods again and join you on an adventure, and I'm looking forward to talking about those things today.
I know, it's funny. One of those things is the first time I ever spoke to you was on the Amazons podcast. No, it wasn't. The first time was with the We Coach podcast. And then I realized that I had to have you back to talk about you having solo hiked the Appalachian Trail. But that was a few years ago. And so then we got into doing some adventures together. And you went on to do the Pacific Crest Trail this year, but that was a journey in of itself because stop, start at the end there. And you went back recently, as you said, to finish up that little gig. So tell us about that first, because that was a box that I'm sure you're glad that you've checked now, and you can add that to the roster.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I am one of those that likes to take very detailed notes, very detailed to-do list, and line it all up. And I get so much satisfaction from actually making that check mark on my list. And this is one of those things that I was like, it has been 170 days since I left the PCT back in September due to wildfires and closures of the trail. Myself and the group that I was hiking with for most of the trail, we weren't able to get to the Canadian border before the fire closures pretty much closed out the entire hiking season and sent everybody on trail back home, which was so completely devastating and just not that complete checkmark feeling that I love to have. And so 170 days went by, and I have to say that those 170 days, for some people, it was just, let's just jump back into life and live life. And then if I get back out to the trail, that would be great. But for me, that was something I spent every single day thinking about, okay, what's it going to be like getting on trail? I got to get back on trail. I was thinking about the PCT and the closure that I was going to have to finally get out there and close it down. So I'm happy to say that I was able to finally get out there and spend a total of about 5 days to wrap up the trail. And, in thinking back on it, it really was more than just a 4.5 month hike total accumulation of trail days. It really turned into a year-long effort to make this happen. And there was so much that happened during those 170 days that, that were part of the hike for me. There were things happened during that time frame that I thought about while on trail the first time I was out there, and then obviously when I went back to wrap it up with a nice tidy bow.
Well, you did that. Well, I'm sure you had a bow in your back pocket when you finished in Canada.
Yes, yes.
But just let's go back to when you actually, your official start date on the Southern Terminus near Mexico was May of last year.
I think it was May 12th, May 11th.
May 12th, that's right, May 12th.
Yeah,
because I was tracking you, I remember. So you started over a year ago, and only just finished, and that was because of those interruptions with wildfires. So your total days on trail were actually how many? 4 months and what?
Yeah, I don't know the exact day. There were so many just times where we had to get off trail and, skip a small little section due to fire closures or go back and retrace steps. I don't really know, but it was a combination of about 4.5 months, give or take, a couple days there.
And you met up with these two other women, and I know you talked about them in the past, but just remind everybody, and they can go back and listen to other episodes with you on Amazons and on the Strip Naked podcast. There's lots of opportunities to hear you here on WISP. But with these two women, whilst you call it a solo hike, but you met up with them. You didn't always hike all day with them. You'd meet up with them at night and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I set off to do this hike by myself, but in the trail community and in trailways, you always end up meeting, people that you might align with in one way or another. And I did. I met these two younger women, and we gave each other, or I'd already had my trail name established, but I gave them trail names, and we really clicked right away, and it was a lot of fun. So we would spend majority of the time not hiking together. I love to just go and hike by myself and really get into the experience or meet other hikers or have other experiences. But there were times that we did hike together, and some of the conversations were just absolutely wild that probably are very inappropriate for some of these podcasts. But we did learn a lot about each other, and we shared this special friendship that, when you go out there, I wasn't expecting any of it. These women are, 15, almost 20 years younger than I am. And you don't think that you're going to mesh well, but they pushed me and they helped me see that I can do hard things, right? And I could get to the end of the day and feel confident that I got 20, 25 miles under my belt with, all these different grades of elevation. And they made me feel really confident in my abilities to go ahead and get to the end of this thing. And the special thing about these two women, and I named them, one of them was Glider. She's an endurance athlete. As far as her hobby, and another one, Natty G, which is short for National Geographic or Nat Geo, because she knew all kinds of things that were going on out in the wild that we had no clue about. So she schooled us on things. So we called her Natty G for short. And she is a conservationist, and she's out working, in the trail system and in the mountains and looking at ecology and things like that. So, it was really neat to surround myself with people that were going to make me better or stronger, help me think through things that are better sustainable ways of living and things like that. So the really cool thing about meeting these two women is that we sustained this friendship even when we were off trail. So for that long period of time between September and the end of June, we were texting and calling and setting up video calls and staying in touch. And there were so many different small life events that happened for all of us that was really cool that we were able to celebrate offline, but then to go back and really celebrate them when we were together a couple of weeks ago. It was really special.
Yeah, I mean, these are lifelong friendships, aren't they now? I mean, you share like really important adventures, like really significant moments in your life when you do the kind of things that you do. And I consider you fearless anyway. So I can't imagine you lacking confidence to do any of this. So it's interesting to hear you talk about the dynamics, because these women were younger than you. And I would say those roles are reversed when you and I go out on adventures.
Maybe so. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think that there's something happens, and I won't say that it's a certain age or anything like that, but as a former athlete and somebody who was 100% fearless in everything that I did, I used to never be afraid of heights or scary situations, but now there's some fears that creep in from every now and then. I absolutely hate leg cramps. They freak me out, and that's a big fear. It's like, I don't want to get a leg cramp that's completely debilitating, and I just have this image that my calves are just going to snap in half, right? And it's an awful image to be in the middle of nowhere with 4 pieces of calf.
Not your calf. No, not your calf. You have got the strongest calves. They're never going to snap.
The bigger and stronger they are, the harder they snap, I think. And that's just that's the way I feel about it. But yeah, you get things like that. And, I'm learning that I am terrible at breathing in elevation. And those used to be things that I never really thought about until you get out there and it's like, wait a minute, I am struggling with this. And I used to say I wanted to jump out of an airplane and skydive and bungee jump and do all this cliff jumping and, all these different things. And it's like, nope, I'm good. I like the ground. I like my feet touching the ground, and things roll just really easy like that. So yeah, there's little things that kind of creep in, and I don't know if it's an age thing or more or less an experience thing. And I'm sure you can relate to that, right? I mean,
I think, yeah, it's a combination of things, isn't it? And I don't know if it's how we evolve, and obviously years impact that, the advancing years, how you evolve, right? And, and your sense of security, your sense of self-preservation, I think they all change. And I'm not sure that anybody is as ruthless and fearless in as they get older as they were when they were younger. I think this is just a state of evolution. And, I think I always had a fear of heights, as you know. I still have a fear of heights. And that's an interesting one in itself, because you're braver when it comes to heights. And, you can stand in the middle of the bridge and take photos. I can stand in the middle of the bridge. I'm not always comfortable to take photos, but I'm getting better. I'm, as you know, from the last bike ride we did, there's a definite shift in attitude. And the fear was creeping back towards the end because we did cross some pretty big bridges. But it's interesting how you do change, right? And in terms of what you find imposing and where you find your security, where you feel safest. And I certainly feel safest when I'm grounded. But you're braver. I think you're braver, definitely braver in heights than I am. But like you, I don't think I want to do the bungee jumping or the base jumping, any of that anytime soon. And there was a time that I did want to jump out of an airplane, but that was a long time ago. That was a really long time ago. Some big moments. Talk about some big moments from that trail, Mars. What are the ones that will head the chapters up in your memoir?
That trail delivered a little something challenging pretty much every day. But what was really cool is going back out to trail, because what I realized was that when you're not in the moment, or you're not on the trail, or you're not in that environment, so to speak, it's really hard for me to recall memories and recall stories or experiences that happen. But as soon as I stepped foot on, we went out there late in June this past year, and as soon as we stepped foot, and as soon as I got my stride and started, breathing hard, walking up a mountain, and I felt my calves burning, like I was just flooded, completely 100% flooded with memories of taking those early steps, starting off in the desert. Never hiked in the desert before in my life in last May, and being so parched, so thirsty, wondering where the next drink of water was going to be. And I think one of the highlights in the desert for me was like, I am bent over in a 4-point stance next to a cow, a real cow. And we're sharing the same water source. And I look over and I'm like, I can touch this cow. That cow's tongue is in my water. And I'm like trying to be as nice and polite about it as possible, but I want that water before that cow drinks it all. And I'm over there competing with a cow to get drinking water that I was going to, later get off trail and go and filter and make it safe to drink. But I'm sitting there like my butt's up in the air, and I'm competing with a cow for their drinking source. And I'll never forget that. But it took me going back to trail to remember that memory. Unfortunately, there's no pictures of that. But, there's other things, walking through the windmills in 115-degree dry heat and just getting blown away with all this dryness and wondering when is it going to be dark enough to just get a little reprieve from the sun? And that was going past the LA Aqueduct, and then going up through the Sierra Mountains and seeing some of the most beautiful places and mountains and elevation and snowy mountaintops that I had ever seen in my entire life. I've seen a lot of beautiful mountains. I've been out into the 14ers in Colorado. I've seen some other stuff, and it's just, I love that environment. But when you get to the Sierra and you see it open up for the first time, you really see what, artists like Ansel Adams would have seen when they were out there taking pictures for the first time in that area. And then to not only see it from a distance, but you actually feel like you're part of the art, because you're like right there in the middle of everything. You can take a 360-degree panoramic view, and you're right there in the middle of everything. It's not like, oh, look at that way over there. You're in it. And that was amazing to me. And of course, all the wildlife that would come and creep up around your tent, the bear, the deer, the marmots, the little bitty field mice, and the pikas or the pikas. And then obviously going up and climbing, Mount Whitney, which is the highest peak in the lower 48, that will always be a memory. And, just the challenges of getting up and being in that type of elevation, will always be memorable for me. But, at the same time, it was also about all the people and all the different people's stories. I love hearing people's stories, and it's such a storytelling trail. And just to be a part of that type of community, and to now know that I'm done and I'm part of the alumni class of 2022, even though I just finished in 2023, I'm still part of the class 2022. And then that feels good, to have that kind of history behind you and have those memories that now that I was able to go back and have the memories for a second and third and fourth time being on trail again, they really are embedded in me now. They will always be a part of me.
Absolutely. They make up the tapestry of your life, don't they? And you'll have find ways to remember, I think, some of those. But it's a shame how we do forget, some of those moments then when you're out there and they really seem like key moments of an adventure, and that they do slip from the mind. It's just a shame. They do.
Well, sometimes when you're out there, you don't know what's important to remember or not until it's, time has passed, and it's like, you know what? That was important for me to remember that because there was a lesson tied to that somewhere. And that's usually the case, right? Yeah,
that's very true. Yeah. It's only when you look back. And I keep doing that with the adventures that we do. But now that you've done the PCT, so the AT's done, the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, there is one more that waits for you to complete, and that's the Continental Divide Trail. And that would be that you have achieved the Triple Crown. And that is the longest one of all, isn't it, of the three?
Of the three, yeah. It's just right over 3,100. So 3,100 miles. Yeah.
All right. And remind us where that goes from and to.
That goes, it runs north and south from New Mexico up to the Canadian border through Glacier National Park in Montana. So there's several parts of trails that are already existing trails that you'll connect with, like Colorado Trail, part of the Bob Wilderness, and it goes all the way up through Glacier. Yeah, so it would be another beautiful area for most of it.
Absolutely fabulous. Does it go through the Rockies too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be something. And how are you going to attack that? Is that but like the elephant? You you eat an elephant in pieces. You don't swallow it in whole. It's not a joke. How do you eat an elephant?
Yeah. Like, how do you can swallow your? Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I don't know yet. I don't know if it's going to be taking a big gulp of that elephant or biting it off. It's really something that I think Mother Nature is going to kind of dictate how longer trails are navigated in the future. I mean, the more the wildfires that are coming a lot earlier in the hiking season, a lot earlier in the summer, rather, really play a large role on how long the hiking season can actually be, because you have, the snowy season where a lot of these trails, especially up in elevation, are impassable. So we see what happened, like out in Central California this past year with the snowstorms around Mammoth. Like, there is still snow in those areas. The hikers, they can't get through that area without, special tools and things like that. And for the average hiker, it's just not a safe area to be in. So we're going to start seeing more impassable trails, as different weather patterns, change and move through. And that's going to determine whether or not we're going to have a longer or a shorter hiking season. And so, and that suits me okay. I think I would be fine, Chris, if I just broke up one of these longer trails into two sections and hiked half of it one year, hiked the other half in another year. It still counts. I still get the Triple Crown. And I think it would feel just as good, and I would be a little less tired after each adventure. So. And it would make it last longer, which I'm in support of that. I love things that last a long time these days.
in the meantime, you've got to satisfy your itch and get out there on different trails. Do you have anything? I mean, just weekend ones. Do you have anything planned in this blazing summer heat? Though it's got to be harder.
I know. And dodging thunderstorms, especially being on the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey right now, which is really close to the Appalachian Trail. So I am actually I have planned a long weekend adventure. And one of the things with trail community is giving trail magic, which is an opportunity for people to come out and maybe offer up soft drinks or food, or even small gestures to take hikers' trash away from them as they cross a public road or something like that. So I'm going to offer up some trail magic, kind of a give back, and, I guess give back my appreciation for the trail magic that I've received in some of the trails that I've done. So I'll make a long weekend, do some trail magic, and then get out and hike for a long weekend, spend the night, stay in it a little bit. And then for the most part, some of the smaller hikes, I'm planning on doing some of the national scenic trails. Ultimately, I would love to knock off all 11 of the national scenic trails in the United States and kind of go from there. But I think at this point, bringing friends out and introducing more people to the trail and the hiking community is something that I've enjoyed doing over the last several months. And hopefully I'll be able to do more of that, and obviously get you out for more adventures as well.
Well, I'm from through hiking to through biking.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So, that was super fun. And I think a great segue into that is, had we not gone off and tackled another bike trip together, my legs would not have been in shape to go out and do any part of the PCT. And I can always count on you to make sure that my legs are in shape after any of our bike rides. Obviously after completing the CNO and the Great Allegheny, we had this thirst, this little taste to see what else we could do. And so we set off it was May 1st. It was actually my birthday, right?
It's your birthday.
It was my birthday. We celebrated hard that night. Right? And being able to go out and do another, were we out there 10, 11 days, on an adventure, and it was all your idea. Like, that's the thing that's so cool to me is you're like, Mars, I'm looking at this bike trip. What do you think? And it's something that I would have never thought about. I never thought about packing up my bike and taking a long trip. And then, when you introduce these things to me, it's like, okay, well, if Chris Stafford wants to do this and she thinks she can do this, then I'm not going to say no. I'm all in. And so these were your ideas, my friend.
Well, I had some different ideas of where we might go, but then you came up with the best one, which we ended up doing, which was the Empire State Trail, which started in Buffalo, upstate New York, little detour to Niagara Falls because it was there and it was reachable, and then back on trail via Rochester and Syracuse, Albany, down the Hudson Valley, finishing in New York in Battery Park. Now, it was your idea, and then you said to me, I remember you saying to me, wouldn't it be cool, cycling into finishing, having been in the country in upstate New York, in a major city, into New York City. And I thought about that after you said that. I thought, that would be pretty cool. And it actually turned out to be really cool, actually, because how often do you bike into a major city? Not very often.
Yeah, I don't know. And it was a little bit of a culture shock. I mean, we've been riding amongst cows and, small towns, very, very small upstate towns of New York, where you see the backyards of some of the hardest workers in America, I'm sure. And
the backyard, the backsides of rural America.
Yes. It's all everything. And some backsides of the backsides. And so, to roll into one of the most populated cities, it's just like, okay, there's a lot of people here. Get out of my way, and I'm always like to ride behind you and watch you navigate. And you just got the bell ringing. Move, get out the way. But that was amazing to me. That was such a great way I mean, first of all, bike packing is a great way to see America that you just don't see. It's like hiking. You get to get dirty and skin your knees up in some of the most remote areas that you just can't reach by car. And that's so cool to me. But, you know, I will segue into, I thought this bike packing adventure was going to turn into more like a bike packing. Like we packed our bags full of camping gear and we lugged around at least 30 pounds of gear on our bikes. And shall I say 30 pounds of unnecessary gear on our bikes. Yeah. So how do you feel about all of the tenting and camping you did, Chris?
Oh, I don't, because I have no memories of tenting and camping. None at all. I set off with good intention. Not that camping has ever featured in my life before, since I was in Pony Club when I was knee-high to a fetlock. And it's so long ago that I had never been drawn to it. So turned out that there was a reason why I was never drawn to it, even at this stage in life. Even though I thought, well, we'll take it. It sounded like, okay, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. That'll save us some money in hotels. Yeah, I could do that. When we actually set off, it was 41 degrees in upstate New York. It was cold. It was wet. We were wearing everything that we carried pretty much. Uh-huh. And at the end of the day, as you well know, I needed to recover to continue to do this every day for 3 days. We did not have a 0 day. I needed to rest. And I needed to know that I was going to have a good night's rest. And I knew that if I was giving this camping gig a go, I wouldn't sleep. Mm-hmm. And I would just get accumulatively exhausted. And I wouldn't be, it was... It was okay in terms of fatigue. I got tired at the end of the day. You know, the grumpy, tired Stafford at the end of the day, not a pretty sight. So knowing that I had a bed and a shower and a meal, I could continue to do this accumulatively over a number of days, and I could have kept going. Actually, we did it in 11 days. Mm-hmm. So I could take on greater distances as long as I knew that I could recover at night and have enough sleep so that that my body could recover, because my body's not 30 years old anymore. I try and tell it is, but you know what it's like. It doesn't always listen.
I know. But that's the beauty of these types of adventures, is that you can go off and you can have expectations and you can have a plan for one thing and actually prepare for it to happen. But then, you get things that get in your way. For us, it was weather got in our way, and it wasn't enjoyable. And for us to get the most out of it, have smiles at the end of the day, or at least have smiles at some part of the day, whether or not, hangerness, crept in for either one of us. But, we were still smiling at major parts of the day. And it was because we knew that we had some comfort, to go home to. And I think that's important, to know yourself well enough to know that these are the things that I need, and these are the things that I require for not only myself to have a good time, but for the people around me to have a good time.
Exactly. But you have this need to just touch the ground, don't you? So you slept out a couple of nights along the way. It is a need to actually be out there in nature or sleep on the ground. It's something that you're used to anyway. From being a hiker, you're used to camping.
Yeah, and it's hard to explain. Nobody really understands why. If you're not into it, you're just not into it, and it's hard to understand why somebody else would be. But I will say, I think it's just the adventure of like, okay, where can I actually sleep and get away with it? And especially on some of these trails that are going through
not get arrested. You mean?
Yeah, and not get arrested. And it is funny. I actually ended up tenting or camping 2 of the nights while we were out. And one of them was on one of the river locks, and it was gorgeous. And of course, there's all these signs, don't go onto the lock and don't look at, don't go and trespass here and there. But I found this nice little beautiful green spot, and I looked out my tent, and there was this just giant man-made structure that blocks a lot of water from moving. It was this big lock dam type contraption that we saw plenty of as we were going up and down the river and the canalways. But then everything else around me was complete nature, trees and grass and everything else that, I would equate with camping. But to be camping and then just seeing these spotlights on these giant locks, it was something I'd never done before. And then the next time I actually got a little lost and turned around because, as you know, the mapping and oh, that's a whole nother story, is trying to figure out where we were at any given time on the trail versus, some of the roadways that we would have to cross over or integrate with through some of these small, like little towns and some of the nuances in following the navigation. But I ended up getting a little bit lost, turned around, and my best case scenario, as things were getting really dark and there was nowhere to camp safely, I ended up camping behind a fire station next to a barbecue pit. So I smelled old barbecue for the entire night, wondering, I hope this is a safe place to be. I think it is. Certainly nobody from the fire station would mess with me, but it was interesting because the next morning I smelled all my gear and I smelled like, a very, very strong, pungent barbecue smell. Uh-oh. Knowing that I was going to be taking that same tent out in 2 weeks onto the Pacific Crest Trail where there are actually bears. And so I hung my tent up to air out for the entire 2 weeks. Contemplating whether or not I should Febreze it or wash it or something. But I smelled like barbecue chicken for the rest of that day. And I don't think you even knew that. I don't think I even told you that. No, that's new information. But I'm glad you kept the bears away when you went back on trail. We didn't see any. No, you didn't see any. I didn't see any bears. But overall, when people ask me about the trails, I'm sure they've asked you, is it something I would recommend? No, I don't think it was. They disappointed me in that we knew there were going to be road sections because we intended this to be a trail ride, gravel. But it was disappointing how many road sections there were and that they were very dangerous. Let's not forget the Rhinecliff Hudson Bridge. It was a huge bridge. That we were so close to traffic, and that was terrifying. And I thought it was so sweet when we got on the other side, and you told me you were behind me, and you actually said a little prayer for me because it really was scary. Yeah,
So there were. I think there was too much of it that wasn't fun. And it wasn't scenic. Most of the time we had a railroad one side and an interstate the other. And even though people, talk about the Empire State Trail as if it's one, beautiful ride, it really wasn't, was it? I mean, but I will say that the end, the last, 13 plus miles, whatever it was, coming into New York City, into Manhattan, that was unusual and interesting and a great way to finish the trail.
Yeah. I think the ooh and ah factor sort of lacked. It does get a little redundant. But I think we were also so cold those first 3, 4, 5 days, and cold and wet. We were just chattering and, ready to see the last mile or two come up on the radar. But I was hoping that it would be more of a trail in the woods, seeing more of the countryside, seeing more animals. But, at the same time, it was great to test personal growth and really test yourself, perseverance, adversity. getting through challenging situations and negative thoughts, and really kind of rising up and say, you know what, I can do this. We can get through this. It's just a few more miles. It's a few more miles uphill, but it is just a few more miles. And we may or may not have a restaurant that is edible at the end of the day, but we'll figure it out. And if we have to make a meal in the hotel room, then that's what we'll do. And that's what we did. So yeah, I think that there were a lot of lessons learned on that trip. But yeah, as far as ooh and ah, you know, it was fun. Now we can say we biked entirely through the entire state of New York and into Canada and into New York City.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, then that's cool. So where next?
Where next? Well, I think I'm going to be in a desk chair coming up. You know, it was interesting at the beginning of the recording. You were mentioning how we first met through my work with We Coach. And it's interesting how sometimes things come full circle. And I have just taken a new job back with We Coach. So I'll be working with coaches again and programming and education and helping women in coaching. So super excited about that. And so, yeah, I'll be at the desk, and it'll be up to me whether or not I can get away on the weekends or at night or early in the mornings to get away. So, yeah, that's going to be TBD until we talk again, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I'm thinking after this last experience of the Empire State Trail, I don't want to be biking in that kind of environment again. You know, I want to go somewhere where it's quieter.
Yeah.
And it's not, to me, the number of miles we do. We did over 650 on that trail over 11 days. Last year we did the Potomac Heritage Trail. That was over 450 miles. But now I think to me, it's more about the quality of those miles than the quantity. So I'm looking at somewhere quieter, that's scenic, where we will bump into wildlife and just be very scenic and more enjoyable. So I've got Nova Scotia in my head, and I won't be satisfied until I've gone and explored it to see it. So I think I might go up there in the fall and drive around and, you know, see what's doable up there, because I'm told that it is really very pretty. So that's in my head at the moment, Mas.
Yeah, well, I know that you'll do your homework. You're not going to go and jump into a situation you're not familiar or aware of. That's for sure. So yeah, I've heard wonderful things about it too. So I don't know. Maybe that's on the horizon. Maybe I'll take a road trip.
There you go. There you go. Well, I think for now, you've got to get back to We Coach. And I, you know, since we last spoke, of course, I started another podcast, which I'm having a real blast with. It's not about women's sports. It's all about women artists.
Which is a true passion of yours.
Yeah, and it's so much fun talking to artists from all mediums, women artists. And the podcast is called The Art Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. And I'm talking to women from all over the world and all over the spectrum of art. So that is really, really, really fun. I'm really enjoying that. Yeah.
As you interview these women, Chris, do you find that a lot of your topics or questions or just points of interest, do they overlap with, you know, your expansive career in interviewing women in sport? Is it just women in art and basically the same passion and same efforts that they make as athletes, but just in a different medium?
It's a different journey. And someone was asking me this question just the other day, actually, how we compare the artists with the athletes. And there are similarities, but the type of person is very different. Mm-hmm. It's very, very different. Yeah. Yeah. That it's almost a podcast in itself that is discussing those differences. Yeah.
Interesting.
Very different, but yeah, great fun. I'm loving it. Anyway, join me on the Art Podcast if you're interested in women artists, or join me back here. I know if you subscribe to Wiz Sports, that you know we recently dropped a preview of the Football World Cup, which it takes place in July, starting on the 20th through the 20th of August. That's on Wisp, just on the main channel there. Nancy Gillen and I got back together again to preview these championships, the World Cup rather. And And then I'm hoping that Marci will come back and do more podcasts with me. Just the two of us. I mean, we could talk about anything, couldn't we, really?
Absolutely. And I hope to be back as soon as I get my feet back on the ground to come back with the Stripped Naked podcast, where I can bring in more women athletes or women in sport who have quit sport for whatever reason to explore other options and see where they are in their journey and strip them naked, so to speak. Very, very, so to speak. Yes.
Metaphorically speaking. Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
All on WISP. Now, we call it WISP because it's not just about sports. There are other things that you'll find on WISP. And in the meantime, if people want to look back at anything that you've done out on trail, they can follow you on Instagram. Just tell them, everybody, how to.
Yeah, Instagram is the best way to see any of my trail adventures or anything, and it's at Blonde Bear Hikes. And Blonde Bear is my trail name, so that's BLONDEBEAR at Blonde Bear Hikes.
Blonde Bear Hikes. We're at WISP Sports or WISP and also the Art Podcast. So thank you, Marci. It was great catching up with you and doing this because, it's just fun. It's just fun doing stuff together with you. I just love just doing stuff.
It's always fun. I always learn something new.
Always, always. All right. Till the next time then, my friend, stay safe, enjoy the new job and enjoy everything you do out there in the wild too.
Sounds good. Happy trails.